network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste. That food is given to families and children in need. Being a kid should be about doing things that make an ordinary day extraordinary. Learning to play an instrument, building a sandcastle, hosting tea parties. Hunger should never be an obstacle to growing up.
You can help end childhood hunger in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Lion Tales, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation on The Voice, Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Charmian Smith, along with Aurora Workman, and our guest today is Marc Horowitz, former medical librarian and assistant chief of library services. Marc, we were talking about, before our break, we were talking about sustainable innovations that you're doing over at the library.
Indeed. Some of the other renovations that we've done is we have replaced the fluorescent lights with LEDs. Now, I really didn't find out until afterwards that 25% of your air conditioning is to overcome fluorescent lights. 25% is enormous.
It is.
We recently replaced the HVAC units on the roof and the boilers in the basement. And just like we do at home, you expect enormous increases in efficiency. And if you look at my budget, I've slashed our anticipated utility expenses. This is great news. Sure. So we're able to reduce our carbon footprint, reduce our utility expenses. And now it's time to talk about some of the less expensive things that we can do, and they're not a big deal.
Okay.
How do we deal with waste? Well, the most effective way to deal with waste is to generate less in the first place. And it sounds so simple. Okay, it's easy to recycle plastics and glass and bottles and cans and cardboard and newsprint and paper. And it's not a big deal, and particularly in Nassau County, where they make it very easy. Well, what about all the other things that we use? Mm-hmm. And what I have seen happen in my facility is suddenly people are washing out their yogurt containers.
The plastic containers. Mm-hmm.
And throwing them in the recycle instead of throwing them in the garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm seeing is that instead of a chock full loaded garbage can, it's half.
Mm-hmm.
This is really making an enormous difference. We buy green materials, and I gotta tell you, if somebody ever said that I would be green, I wouldn't buy that. Although transportation is part of it,
mm-hmm.
As I look out in our parking lot, there are very few gas guzzlers around. If you're only getting 20 miles a gallon, you're at the low end. And having grown up with 10 miles a gallon, 20 and 30 is terrific.
Right.
How do you use your land? Are you putting out tons and tons of chemicals so that you can keep that lawn green? Are there other things that you can do? Mm-hmm. And there's no question that the green opportunities are getting better. Did you remember to turn off the water? Turn off the lights? Are you looking at your carbon footprints?
Mm-hmm.
So, Marc, the question I have is, what happens to all of those books when you purge them? Where do they go?
Well, if they're usable, and in fairness, many of the books are not, then they go into the paper recycle. What about the books that are donated that are usable that we can't use? We donate them. Okay. Books for Better World, book fairies, they take the books and they pay for the shipping. Because, as you know, a box of books adds up real fast.
Oh, yes.
So having gone through the entire sustainability process, we identified weaknesses and strengths. And while we're way ahead in terms of the expensive things, the HVAC, the boilers, the windows, the doors, which add up real fast.
Oh, yes.
The small things are easy to do. It's very easy to recycle. And it's a feel-good thing, too.
This is so true. This is so true.
So we also know that you were the former medical librarian and assistant chief of library services in Northport at the VA?
That is correct. And the difference between a medical library or any other special library and your public library is they've got a focus. And in medical libraries, the focus tends to be through journals, not books.
Okay.
If you have solved the cancer dilemma and you put it in a book, it's 3, 4, 5 years before the book gets printed. If you put it in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is a weekly, or a monthly magazine, you can have your information out in weeks or months. And when we're talking about journals, we're talking about authoritative journals. And medical libraries would have that. These are peer-reviewed journals. So editors will read somebody's research to determine if the research is valid. Doesn't mean that they agree with the outcome. It means that the research is sound. One of the very interesting things that we had in medical libraries well before anybody else was automation. Rather than using printed indexes, Medline came out in the 70s, and you could search online combining terms. So rather than just single subject headings, you could combine adverse effects of drugs on a particular item. And it was much more effective to search the literature that way.
That was wonderful. You're listening to Lion Tales on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Aurora Workman, along with Dean Charmian Smith, and our guest today is Marc Horowitz, Library Director, CEO of North Babylon Public Library. He's also a ski instructor, plays a French horn, and it was in the Nassau Community College concert band. He's a proud father of 3 and an honored alumni of Nassau Community College. So we've learned a lot today in terms of being sustainable, not only just at the library, but in our communities. And so we thank you for that. And these are some of the activities that you reach out to the community with and teaching them how to be more green, or do they have the programs about more green?
Through the process, we have shared our knowledge with the community, and once we give our final presentation and receive our certification, we're going to take the ball and run with it and broadcast it everywhere.
Well, we hope to be looking for that green library. That's going to be wonderful. Another thing we know, and I just want to touch on this before we near the end, we noticed one of the changes that you see in the library with the upcoming librarians. Is there still a force for librarians?
There is still a need for librarians. The work is different than what I had envisioned 40 years ago. The knowledge that we expect new librarians to come in with is automation, is computers, is we want our librarians to teach our community how to take advantage of downloadable books. Now, a lot of people like this. You can take a dozen books on your little tablet and take them with you on vacation instead of filling up your valise with a ton of stuff. That's what we're looking for in new staff members.
Because I know just using my, tablet, and I have a bookshelf there where I download all these great books because it'll tell you, oh, here's a new book to download. And it does come mighty handy when you're at the doctor's or something and you have to wait on a long line. Having a downloadable library is very handy. Very handy.
Marc, what about the patrons? We've noticed that they also, you alluded to it a little bit before, that they're expecting 24-hour access to the library.
The expectations are much, much higher. They expect the information now. They don't want to have to drive to another location to pick it up. Can you get it faxed? Can you get it emailed? Can you send it to me in some other format? the expectations are very, very high, and they deserve to expect that level of service.
Do you have we have here at the college, we have a texture librarian service. So at any time, a student can text our librarians and get answers to their questions. I have to say, it's not at any time. It's when we're open between 9 and 5. I have to clarify that. Does your library have something similar to that?
Any method of communication. You can pick up the phone. You can send something electronically. You can send a fax. You can send an owl. And if you're a Harry Potter fan, you know what that is.
Very nice reference. It's been great having your input, because you've seen it from your early start of being in the libraries. And one of the things is, I know just learning, like we keep in the elementary school, we still have a library science in there. But one thing it helps, it teaches them how to later on research and to look up. Even as my daughter said, it taught me how to look up Google, what to ask Google for. And that was important. I never thought of it until she had said it, but that was an important, aspect of still having the library sciences in your schools.
Much as Google may be an interesting tool, it will never replace a knowledgeable librarian.
This is true. And that's why it's always good. I always remember my favorite librarian from me going to my public library in Uniondale. And I don't know where Mildred moved to, but she was always so helpful, and even up to where, suggesting other books and things that I may not have thought about. So it was great. It's always great to have somebody that you can actually talk to at the library. I really think that's always one of the greatest things that we can do. So as a final thought for our listening audience, what is one of the unique experiences that you've come away with, in your career?
I have a couple of philosophies. Mm-hmm. Number one, always do your best. If you need help, get help. Surround yourself with the best people. We don't need yes men. We need people to challenge us to be our best.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that was, one of the things that I know that our professors and everyone has always said to us. Do you remember a professor? Do you have one that you remember that said something to you that you stick to you all these years after you've left Nassau Community College?
I can picture them. I can't remember their names.
Okay.
Can you remember their departments?
Chemistry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we want to thank Marc Horowitz for coming today and being our guest on Lion Tales. And if you need to contact you, how could they contact what library? How could they contact the library?
They can find me at the North Babylon Public Library, 631-669-4020.
Email?
I get a lot of email. We like to talk to people.
Well, thank you so much for coming and being our guest today on Lion Tales.
Thank you for inviting me.
We want to thank you for being with us. My name is Charmian Smith, along with my fabulous friend Aurora Workman, president of the Nassau Community College Alumni Association. The creative director of Lion Tales is Rudy Breedy. This show is a production of the NCC Alumni Association. Visit ncc.edu/WHPC for more information. Available as a podcast on iTunes, Android, Podcasts, and Speaker. Lion Tales is powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. We'll talk to you next week.